Morning, gentlemen. So we're about to discuss buildings in the new normal, which we've been dealing with now for several months. And I think it's going to be part of the legacy of us moving forward as a society and trying to get to a level of performance that can accommodate these stressors in the future. So before we move ahead, could you tell us a bit about the services Hanson has historically provided for its clients?
Certainly. Hanson provides a multitude of engineering services for design in aviation, rail, higher ed, K-12, government, industrial, and a wide variety of facilities.
Excellent. Well, it seems like you've got a kind of a full life cycle approach to the energy piece, which is going to be a critical avenue we're going to explore today with the new normal. So I guess suppose maybe what is the most common problem you see in the energy efficiency and renewable space, and how does what you guys do provide a solution?
Devesh, there are a wide variety of hurdles with facility improvement measures that revolve around energy efficiency and renewables. You get into the systems that need to be replaced, the deferred maintenance, a wide variety of things like that that figure into both the operational budget as well as the capital budget. But through our energy audits and retrocommissioning, we've found that we can discover both low and no cost items that can be implemented right away. And they can really start saving money. And Wade is the expert on that. And I'll ask him to further elaborate on the topic.
So it's interesting when the common problem or the hurdle that you see is different for each owner, right? Some of them it's deferred maintenance. Some of it's purely their energy cost. Some of it's that they've never optimized the system or the buildings weren't commissioned to begin with. And so it's one of those things where we have to talk with the owner and the facility staff to truly understand what's driving them.
Excellent. So I guess, Wade, now that you're chimed in here, you've been involved deeply with the Austrias Epidemic Task Force and setting standards for the reopening and the new normal. I'd love to hear some insights from you on that. And then also, just a comment about, as you talk to different ownerships, you probably see some that are more prepared.
Absolutely. The ASHRAE Epidemic Task Force was created to help mitigate the virus transmission with your HVAC system, right? It was assumed very early on to be sufficiently likely by ASHRAE, and so that's when we started providing that guidance for how to evaluate your HVAC systems, not only for the SARS-CoV-2 with mitigation strategies, but also for its actual current performance, kind of a tactical commissioning. And the task force itself was, when it was initially created, had looked at three different timeframes. One was the immediate COVID-19. Two was the near term. At that point, was considered the second wave, which is where we're kind of hitting today. And the third was the long term, to make sure that the guidance that was created went into standards and guidelines and the ASHRAE information so that it didn't get lost. So currently the task force is using a scientific application team to really research the impact of these strategies and to try and evaluate, give better guidance as to what would be more applicable in different situations. The other is that there's a research team that is looking at the gaps in the information. Until one of the recent studies regarding, done by University of Oregon and Institutes of Health, there wasn't a lot of evaluation that occurred between the return grill and the supply register, i.e. the HVAC system. Most of the studies only concern themselves within the space where people were. And so, that's going to help provide that information for that new normal and reopening. As far as clients go, we are seeing a variety of clients. There are some that I know of that started back in May and evaluated every single space they have to see how it met outdoor air code requirements and filtration levels. And it was a university where they actually excluded a lot of spaces from being able to be scheduled as classrooms for this current year, because they were going face to face. Others did it over the summer. And then unfortunately, we had clients that were calling us in late August, early September and saying, help, we need your help in evaluating these systems. And so you'll run the gamut in terms of their preparedness.
Gotcha. If I could just crystallize something from what you just said, though, I think in my mind, I'm thinking there have been ASHRAE standards for a long time. The question is, will COVID now create even more sort of gumption for, being in adherence with those standards than in the past? Just like deferred maintenance has always been an issue. We now have this new normal where it's pushing owners to be accountable to the standard and looking deeper in, as you said, not just in the workspace, as to the whole system.
Correct.
You know,
Correct.
and I have to say, coming from understanding the market barriers, you know, when we do finance, it's all very intriguing to see how do we get people around those barriers, which now have kind of ratcheted up, if you will.
I think a lot of owners are finding out right now just how much deferred maintenance they really have. And some, unfortunately, is more than 50% of their equipment are past their useful life. They're finding out that a lot of that deferred maintenance is preventing them from actually introducing the right amount of outdoor air to meet the local code and or ASHRAE standard 62. That their level of filtration or the installment of that filtration, which plays a big part of its effectiveness, isn't up to speed where they need to be. I think what you're going to see is that owners are taking buildings that were built for comfort and slight indoor air quality, right? Keeping people, you know, sheltered, if you will, where versus a health, you know, hospital or a laboratory where it was built for safety. And now they're trying to operate, go into this mode of operation, this epidemic mode operation that is more geared towards safety. And they're starting to see some of those shortcomings, but they weren't intentionally designed that way, right? They were designed to be keep out of the, you know, out of outside, make it comfortable and be as efficient as possible. Whereas a lab is built to be safe in the environment and please use the least amount of energy possible. And so there's a disconnect there. And that's where I think a lot of the standards and guidelines is how do you get people to kind of plan in some of those things, but you're not going to build a school or an office to be like a laboratory only to run it like a school, because that's a lot of initial capital cost. So it's finding those little tidbits of changes, right? One of which is filters. MERV 8 is MERV 6 or MERV 8 is the standard. ASHRAE task force is saying use MERV 13. So do you plan in for MERV 13 dirty filters in your next design, but you only install MERV 8s, but you know you can then change out as you move forward, right? So you're planning the infrastructure to operate at a higher level, but you're only going to operate it at the lower level of normal, right? And so I think that's kind of the nuances where what the task force has started to create and how does that get rolled into the guides and the standards moving forward without it becoming a burden on the cost of construction.
Interesting. Well, I think, you know, certainly this, what you just said just ties into my next question, which is, you know, what has changed regarding the market since the emergence of COVID? You know, I think you tied into some of that. I'm just curious, like at a standard level, if indeed what you're saying about trying to minimize costs and do this operation, will there be some sort of ask from tenants to say, well, what is the standard you're meeting and how do I know? Is it certified by somebody? That's where the market signal, I think, might push back on ownerships to come up with some minimum standard.
You know, what's interesting with that is prior to COVID, prior to, you know, the last issue or the concern, right? The HVAC systems are, if it's comfortable and I don't hear them,
yeah,
I don't really, you know, the typical person doesn't go in and go, oh, how's my system working? Or what kind of air quality am I getting? If it's comfortable and not, you know, and working in those ways, right? We jokingly, we have a slide that will shows a person sitting next to a thermostat and all of the HVAC system parts and pieces and control sensors and the complexity of it all. And the person goes, oh, I'm comfortable, everything works well, right? It doesn't always work well in that scenario, but that's the level that people are typically in tune with what's going on with their HVAC system. Now with COVID, a lot more people are asking that question. Hey, what level of outdoor air do I have? You know, the biggest question there is, as you mentioned, some of these old buildings is, what code was it designed to? If it was built 20 years ago, you know, it's a different code than it is today. And so you have to analyze it against when it actually got permitted to be built. And that amount of outdoor air has varied, right? It greatly increased in the 80s, and then in the 90s, it started coming back down for energy, right? CO2 use for demand controlled ventilation was implemented. Right. And that's it's a marker for bioeffluence. But so when you're looking at these standards and how they, you know, what the owners and the occupants really need to be doing is they are more in tune, but they're asking questions of, hey, can I get UVC? Hey, can I have this bipolar? Or hey, what filters do we have? And it's great that they're asking. When we talk about creating a building readiness plan for this instance, which is in the building readiness guide from the task force, is that you must include the non-HVAC strategies, right? Mask required or recommended, traffic patterns. Those are the first ones, because those are the ones that people can actually be a part of and are involved with or impact them directly. Then you include the HVAC strategies that you're doing. Here's the level of outdoor air. Here's the MERV that we're going to do on our filters. Here's any air cleaning technology. Here's when we might add in-room air clean fan filtered HEPA devices. But that plan is typically, they only are impacted by it. They don't have impact on it, if that makes any sense. They have no control over what goes into that HVAC system. You want to share everything because, as you said, people are a little more in tune, and so they want to see what's going on. But I have actually talked to property managers that state that they have properties in 26 different states in the U.S., and less than half have actually asked them, hey, what's going on with our systems? What do we need to be doing, as tenants? And so I'm not sure the sophistication of those clients yet and where that's hidden.
I think you raised some really good points about the self-control from the tenants, individuals, occupants. I think, but some of what you're saying echoes to the point of where we are with technology these days, with continuous commissioning, for example. Being able to, because if indeed the world that we've lived in has been where I just keep on adjusting things, and when people complain, and you have overrides on the building control systems, and you have set points, different things that are strayed from the original
right
intent, if you will.
Absolutely. And
right.
So when you look at monitoring-based commissioning or fault detection diagnostics, you can
Yes.
start to do preventative items. One of the things in normal operation, BAS systems, if you have it, they have alarms that get set up. Now those alarms become nuisance alarms, and so they always get tweaked. And so for every alarm, there's a timer, i.e. how long does this have to be occurring before I send an alarm, and a limit. So if I take a look at like a filter pressure drop, that's one of the ones that's been altered over the years because, we change them quarterly, or we know when we're at, and I don't want an alarm. And so they've made the timer 9,000 seconds, and they've made the set point 2 or 3 inches, something that it'll never achieve, to avoid getting the alarms.
Look at that.
Well, with COVID, I surely want to know when my filter's not in place, or it's too loaded and particles could be bypassing it. And so it's a shift in that what alarms are critical. And that's some of the things that you have to have owners understand and make adjustments to.
So I think that's you tie it all together. If the owner can provide, give a sense of self-responsibility to the occupants. You've got to follow the rules as best as you can with the mask, the one-way paths, etc. But as an owner, here's what I'm doing. And, if I were to disclose that I'm going to be, monitoring the filter, the pressure drop parameters, and that they're like, okay, great. So we know our filters will get changed on time. That's the signal back to the tenants.
Correct. That is the confidence, the ability for your strategies that you implement to build confidence in the occupants, feeling of being safe or safer in that space. Now, ASHRAE, one of the things we clearly say is you cannot make statements about you are 2 times as safe to be in this building as outdoor or another building. What we can talk in is terms of what the mitigation strategies do, right? So a filter captures X amount of particles, or it's efficient up, based on, so like a MERV 13 filter at 1 micron to 3 micron, at the lowest efficiency is 85% at capturing particles. Now that's the filter that's installed properly and capturing everything, right? There are studies that show a MERV 15 filter bank installed poorly acts like a MERV 8. And so a MERV 11 filter bank installed properly would be a lot more effective for the occupant, right? But you could clearly provide that feedback to the owner, or the owner provide it to the occupant, right? Hey, we're measuring our outdoor air coming into the building, and we are at or above code required levels. Our filters are MERV 13, and we've got pressure drop sensors across them, so we know when to change them And so we're monitoring that for the effective time to change those filters. Or if you've got UVC, what level is the anticipated in activation from those devices. And so that goes into that building readiness plan to share with the occupants so they're aware of it. They have no control over it, right? And that's why you do the non-HVAC first, then the HVAC within that plan.
No, I think this is really good. I mean, I see like a recipe book for an owner. I know that some of the property management firms I know have come up with all these reentry building plans. I think going back, it might be good for us to follow up with some of these folks on the exact, menu they're going to provide to their tenants and occupants as to how to proceed and what they're going to do and what the expectations are of the occupants. Now,
correct. We're actually doing that for clients where we're creating a HVAC operations guide, or that's the intended. You're going to go analyze the facility. You're going to go look at it. Here's our preferred method of strategies that we want to implement, right? And so that's at a campus level or at a property management level. And then for each of the buildings or each of the campuses with multiple buildings, then is the building readiness plan that says, here's what we are actually doing, right? And so one is more of a systematic system level, that a guide, but it's keeping everyone in line with what you want to do for your entire portfolio.
Okay, so we take it to another level. If we are talking if I'm an owner, I want to talk about how I'm, as an owner, really concerned about resiliency, and we're building that into how we run our facilities. I think the energy tie-in now to this filtration piece. Now, if I'm changing filters on time, what's the tie-in to me conserving energy? If I do deferred maintenance, I leave those filters in, I take an energy hit as well, and that kind of like it's that whole, when we bring everything together, when we talk about sustainability and resiliency, it's the meeting of different silos, things that have been siloed coming together. In the case of your air quality, health, and environment coming together in multiple ways.
Right. I look at this as one piece of a resiliency plan for a facility, right? Located here in Florida, a lot of buildings have hurricane preparedness measures, right? This is just another level of preparedness measures that you might have for resiliency. Bill is heavily focused on those, and so I think he probably has some good insight here.
And that's what we're doing with a wide variety of our customers now. Like last Friday, Wade and I started out the morning speaking with a hospitality client, and they're looking at this type of thing, looking at both energy as well as the resiliency. After lunch, we got together with some friends discussing aviation and how resiliency applies to airports and how it ties in with the energy as well. And then late in the day, we talked with one of our large clients who happened to be rail oriented, and talked with them about all the things that they can incorporate as a part of this. So as Wade was talking about, this really covers the waterfront, and all of our owners to one degree or another can benefit from it.
And I think one of the things with this, right, during this, as I said, COVID-19 issue or time frame where you're taking a building built for comfort to operate for safety, when you look at all of those measures, inherently it's going to use more energy, right? One of the things is recommended is a pre or post occupancy flush. 3 equal air changes out of the building get you about 95% contaminant removal. That may be more than people are doing today, so that's going to increase this energy. So when we go and we do our systems analysis and we help our clients in looking at this, we're doing tactical commissioning at that time. And so we're looking for a lot of the low cost, no cost stuff we were talking about early on with the energy audits and et cetera, because it could potentially help them today, but it definitely will help them as they get past and into post-epidemic mode of operations. Like one of the situations, we went to a building, we're analyzing the air side, but I went and looked at the chilled water side to see what was going on. And the chiller was doing less than a 3-degree delta T, but the pumps were doing more than 80% of their flow. Well, there's a disconnect, right? If the delta T across the chiller is only 25% of their capacity, but they're flowing 80% of their water, they've got some valves broken or open or not operating properly. And so by making those adjustments now, that could potentially offset the energy for doing that pre or post occupancy flush that I was mentioning.
Because you've increased the capacity.
Well, the pump, hopefully in that case, the pumping would decrease and the chiller would increase in its performance, thereby.
Performance, yeah. Capacity to handle that additional energy consumption.
Right.
Because you get the delta T to increase. And
Correct. Right. And that energy savings in the chiller plant could pay for the additional operation for
Right.
the function time frame.
And adding on to that, one of the things that we've noticed in going through with all these buildings is there's typically about a 3% to 5% degradation in the energy using systems of these buildings annually. And so coming back in and retuning those and retrocommissioning and developing the facility improvement measures that Wade does so well has really helped a lot of our customers and, you know, brings them back up to speed as they need to be.
As well as putting maybe the analytical continuous commissioning solutions in. So you're tracking failures in the systems to get the work orders out and get them fixed. And so that's a nice transition to what we deal with in the reality of our world in the finance, is that we know that while all these things are great to do, and in some cases now with COVID, it's pretty much a new standard is coming up upon us. We still are very well aware of these very conservative payback thresholds and value engineering that happens over and over. And I'm talking payback thresholds, 2 years, 1.5 years or less, 18 months, you know, and a lot of this, the soft, quote unquote, soft costs are super important, like commissioning, because I think some of your clients may have longer term investment horizons, might be more public sector, then you've got the private. You might see a divide in how each of those actually, what the uptake looks like. But so, you know, for the CapEx projects you do recommend, from low, no cost to those that are even more intensive, you know, how do you present the savings opportunity? And what is a typical, you know, you can have a bundled set of ECMs, you can have isolated, and you present that case. And, you know, what are you seeing and where would you like to see things go?
So our goal with facility improvement measures is to focus on the items that we believe are going to fit within our clients' financial metrics. That has to be part of the initial conversation that you have with that owner, because as you noted, they are completely different. We have some that have a simple payback for 2 years. We have some that say they want a 7% return on investment. And we have some that actually look at their actual cost of capital. So investing some capital into this, is it going to be a better return than they're getting with their capital, you know, corporate wide. But one of the things we pride ourselves on is providing some of those no cost, low cost that can be done by facility staff, so you can start to get the savings early on. But we do calculate out these capital expenditures projects, and one of the other discussions you have to have with the owner is, to what level of detail are we going in these calculations? So an ASHRAE level 3 audit requires investment grade calculations, right, for cost and savings. We've got a lot of clients that they just want defensible calculations, things that make sense. They're going to be conservative by nature, but they're not looking to set the exact dollar they're trying to save. But they would rather us, instead of spending the time to get to that decimal place of calculation, looking for more opportunities for savings, right? The biggest thing with this is, once you have this facility improvement measure list, you need to have another meeting and sit down and look and make sure which of these can be implemented, and start to build that time frame. You're starting to build that energy roadmap of what can we get implemented today. You know, with one of our clients, we looked at it and they had, we found one facility improvement measure, but they had 20 instances of it. So we did a proof of concept, proved that we could save, adjusted the numbers, and then recalculate, and then they went and did the other 20, right? And so that's kind of how you can bundle these or look at these. And as you're doing the implementation, as they're starting to get near finished, you have another conversation and you reset again and say, okay, what is the next batch of things that we want to do? And is our energy roadmap still on path for what this facility needs? And so it really is a lot of communication with the owner and their facility staff in terms of what we're finding, what we're recommending, and what they're able to do financially and time and space-wise.
Well, that fits nicely with how we like to discuss with clients. I know that we're already looking to work with you all on some projects that have, you know, are of mutual interest. And I think it's the upfront conversation on what is the financial appetite or the financial goal, and how do you get there, and what are the financial tools, including some of the tools we offer at our firm, I think is something we'd want to continue to do with you all, especially now with this increased attention on higher standards, and trying to get folks the systems in place that'll help them thrive rather than struggle through all